Hi, everyone. It is Thursday, January 23rd, which means it is finally Oscar nominations day. Today, I'm going to be joined once again by my friend Esther Zuckerman to break down a batch of nominations, this time the big ones. And then later in this episode, you'll hear the audio from a Substack Live that I did on Thursday afternoon with the Ankler's Richard Rushfield, answering some burning questions about how all of this shook out. I'm Katie Rich, and this is the Prestige Junkie Podcast. Okay, good morning, Esther.
Hi.
Last time we did this, we were talking about the Golden Globes, and it felt very like, okay, this is like the kickoff. This isn't serious, but this is for real. This is the Oscar nominations.
For real, yes.
And we were both so nervous this morning for...
I didn't sleep last night. I don't know why.
I know. Every time I'm like, I'm not going to be nominated. Why do I feel so anxious?
I know, it's ridiculous, but yeah.
There are nominations I was hoping for that didn't happen. We can talk about them.
Yeah.
But, we're going to go through all of these. So we should probably go ahead and start with Best Picture. And I really think above all, it's a good lineup.
Yeah, I do think it's a really solid lineup. I was very pleased to see I'm Still Here in there. That was a fun surprise. Not fun. It's not like a fun movie about life under a dictatorship in Brazil. But I think that was really exciting to see. And especially on the YouTube page, all the Brazilian fans were going nuts. I was also sort of so relieved that Nickel Boys made it in. Obviously, there were some disappointing. It's sad that Sing Sing got snubbed there, but I'm Still Here, just like anecdotally. My parents, shout out to my parents, went to see it this weekend and were really struck by I'm Still Here, and were also struck by, hey, there are some parallels to the world we're living in,
maybe
in America. And I sort of wonder if that also might have something to do with it too. I do wonder if that had anything to do with this sort of the momentum that it's having.
Yeah. Well, the voting did happen while the wildfires are happening in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And, climate change is not something that I'm Still Here is about, but a time of uncertainty. And I talked to Fernanda Torres on this podcast a couple of weeks ago, and she was in LA, like literally with the wildfires behind her in the window. And it's very like, okay, I think this is a film for the moment.
Yeah.
There's also the factor that, we'll never really know the impact of the wildfires and the vote totals themselves. But there was kind of the speculation that people in LA might have other things on their mind than filing an Oscar ballot. So, you've got 3 international productions here in the Best Picture top 10 with I'm Still Here, The Substance, and Emilia Perez. So is that a reason why something like I'm Still Here, which people were kind of on the bubble about, could get in there? Maybe.
But
I don't know if we count The Brutalist as an international production too, since it was filmed overseas as well. But
I don't think so.
Well, should we talk about all the nominees to be determined in this Best Picture lineup?
Yeah, I mean, people have a lot of choosing, except for Wicked, which is going to Mike Platt, classically.
He knows how to get his name there where it counts. I mean, yes, and people might remember from a couple years ago, there was a whole thing with like the Hurt Lockers producers and who was included and who wasn't.
A couple years ago.
Look, Esther, 2009. I'm still very young. Yes, you'd only have 4 nominees, and on a lot of these international productions, you'll just get a ton of people who are credited. I think Flow also had nominees to be determined, which if you've seen Flow, the animated and international nominee, there's like 8 different production company logos before you even see the movie. So yeah, I don't think it's anything all that interesting, like the convoluted nature of how they do this, but maybe it says something about how this is a lot of movies that weren't made by traditional studios and weren't, put together in the classic way or put together outside of the US and made it to Best Picture.
Again, yeah, there's some disappointing elements that got left out, but I'm pretty solid with this Best Picture lineup. There's nothing that is like anchoring me about this Best Picture lineup, really. I mean, like, all the films we expected to be there are there for sure.
Like what we perceived as the top 5 of A Complete Unknown, Conclave, The Brutalist, Emilia Perez, Anora is right there.
And Wicked, obviously, we perceived as the top
6. Yes.
Yeah. But like The Substance, it's very cool to see like genre movie like that get in there.
Yeah.
An indie genre movie, sort of a horror movie. Obviously, I'm thrilled that Dune Part 2, which I do think is an incredible achievement, is like, that seemingly could have been forgotten after it came out so early in the year. And then I already mentioned I'm Still Here and Nickel Boys, which I think...
Yeah. Well, Nickel Boys, that was like a huge sigh of relief.
I know. Soraya McDonald, a friend and incredible critic, responded to my Blue Sky post, and it's depressing that obviously we have to be still like relieved that it got in. But I am very happy it's there.
I think you and I both follow the Oscars enough to know that when you're getting a voting body that's about consensus and about the things that people feel most passionate about, like something like Nickel Boys, which inspires a lot of passion and a lot of people saying, I can't handle this movie. It's okay to be relieved. That's kind of how the system works.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the snubs that I think maybe we're both sad about A Real Pain. I think a lot of us thought it was going to go in there. Searchlight had that, and I guess really was able to pivot to A Complete Unknown, which did very, very well this morning. And then Sing Sing, which I loved. I have loved since I saw it at Toronto in 2024. It didn't get shut out. It got a song nomination that I absolutely never saw coming.
Yeah, I know.
So you have to assume it was kind of close there in the Best Picture voting. And I think in this kind of widespread year, like, we'll never see the vote tallies, but I imagine there was a lot of really close calls in a lot of these categories.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about director. We have the 5 nominees: Sean Baker of Anora, Brady Corbet of The Brutalist, James Mangold of Complete Unknown, Jacques Audiard of Amelie Perez, and Coralie Farjat of The Substance. That's 4 of the 5 DGA nominees, right? Coralie was not nominated at DGA.
No, but Mangold was.
Is Edward Berger the one who she knocked out? Okay, Edward Berger, the director of Conclave.
Mangold is really interesting to me here. That was a big surprise. There's something interesting about that slot going over Berger, over someone like Mangold, who in some ways has obviously been in an Oscar conversation before, but is also some ways like a journeyman American director. I almost see that slot as like a tip of the hat to that in a way, in addition to the fact that obviously there's a huge passion around A Complete Unknown. But I think that's an interesting sort of slot there.
Yeah, this is his 5th Oscar nomination. That's including Adapted Screenplay and Best Picture for A Complete Unknown this year. But he's never been nominated for Best Director before.
Yeah.
I mean, Ford v. Ferrari was a big Oscar-y movie. He got a screenplay nomination for Logan. But no, I think that's exactly right. Like, he is this kind of like studio guy of a mold that doesn't really exist anymore.
Exactly.
No one else in this category at all fits that bill. But I think it makes, if you're getting like balance, like Sean Baker, Brady Corbet, American auteurs of different generations, but kind of a similar model of like making indies and getting critical acclaim, but this is kind of a first big awards breakthrough for both of them. And then Jacques Audiard and Coralie Farjat, these like wild international auteurs. There's always one in Best Director these days. That's been the trend for like the last decade or so.
Yeah, and you sort of wondered whether that slot was going to, Berger is someone who, he's not American, but he almost is sort of like creeping in, like he almost sort of has like a Mangold-y quality to him, in that it's like crowd pleasing, like very
steady hand.
But like, so it's sort of like, I'm not mad about this Mangold nomination because I do think there's something nice about like that steadiness.
Yeah. I mean, I had Coralie Farjat and Ramel Ross kind of filed in the same spot in my brain of like the like auteur, big swing.
I think Ramel Ross should be in there 100%. But I had sort of given up that dream a little bit. It just didn't feel like it was going to happen. I vote with New York Film Critics Circle. We gave him Best Director. I fully agree with that choice. I think that is the best directed film of the year and completely innovative in a director's vision. But I had given up on the Oscars going that way, I guess, a long time ago.
Yeah. Should we jump to screenplays real quick since we're talking about a lot of the same people, even though, actors would be the natural place to go. So just in terms of like titles for these films. So as I said, James Mangold also got a nomination for A Complete Unknown. Jacques Audiard also got a nomination for Amelie Perez. Coralie Farjat also nominated for The Substance. Brady Corbet and Sean Baker, also, like all 5 of them.
Yeah, all 5 of them are
nominated
there.
Screenplay. I wonder when's the last time that happened. That's fascinating. And Nickel Boys got that screenplay nomination, which, that was one of the early ones announced. And I was like, okay, all right, no matter what, Nickel Boys didn't get completely blanked by the Oscars.
Yeah, and that also feels like the sort of shitty way the Oscars were gonna tip their hat to how innovative that movie is. Even though Joe Maffrey didn't get a cinematography nod for the way that movie is filmed. Like,
that's like the most innovative thing about the entire movie. That's a crazy thing. We'll get into that category. And then A Real Pain and Sing Sing were kind of the 2 notable omissions for Best Picture. Both got the screenplay nominations. We'll talk about wins later on, but I still kind of wonder Jesse Eisenberg might still be able to pull off a win for that screenplay.
Yeah, I would love that. I think that's such a well-written screenplay, but I don't know. If I had to put money on it, I would say like probably Sean or Brady in that category, but
Yeah, but yeah,
could be. But like, let's spread the wealth, guys. Like,
and then Original is rounded up by September 5, which has been such a big question mark of the Best Picture race for so long. It's wound up being its only nomination. I guess that makes sense. I need to look up like what isn't an original screenplay that should have been there instead, maybe. But sure, I feel like that's a fine spot for that movie to land. Oh, Challengers is what should have been in there.
Yes, Challengers 100% should have been in there. Challengers totally blanked. I guess we can talk about that. That's the sort of segue. Trent and Atticus, I will defend you.
Oh my God.
I will
Justin
avenge
Kritzkis,
you.
I will also avenge you.
Shout out Justin, my high school classmate.
Yeah, I mean, that Challengers score, like, it's funny because I feel like for most of our lives, there was this thing like, oh, it's too cool for the Academy. Like, it won't get in. And that logic has been challenged so much in the last 10 years of how the Academy has changed. But there are still some things that are just too cool for the Academy. And the Challengers score is one of them.
Just like, too cool for the Academy. I mean, now all my horses are behind Daniel Blumberg in that race for The Brutalist, who I think is like, which I think is probably would have been my choice even if the Challengers guys had got in, just because like Trent and Atticus have like such a trophy case of Oscars at this point.
That's true. I always remember when they won for Soul, they already had Oscars, so they basically just like stood behind Jean-Baptiste as he spoke for them, like kind of looking like, all right, do we have to do this again? So yeah, I'm sure they're fine.
Yeah.
Wow, it's just one more thing on screenplay. I was just kind of doing the 1-to-1. So the Best Picture nominees that didn't get in for screenplay are Dune Part 2, which I don't think is a huge surprise.
No.
I'm Still Here, which like that would have been a very valid screenplay
very
nominee,
valid
but
screenplay.
it's crowded.
Yeah.
And then Wicked, which like there's a couple spots where Wicked missed that we can talk about, but I did feel like that's an interesting indication that like it's a big spectacle, but maybe not the like strong possible Best Picture winner that it might have been if it had showed up here.
And you know, as much as I would have loved Winnie Holtzman, my hero, creator of My So-Called Life and writer of Wicked, to get that nomination, it's hard to be mad about that with Nickel Boys and Sing Sing getting into Adapted too.
Yeah. Okay, let's go on to the acting categories, and I want to start with the emotional journey I went on as the Best Actor lineup was announced, because there has been this like solid core 4 in Best Actor that we've all assumed for months and months and months of Adrian Brody, Timothée Chalamet, Coleman Domingo, and Ralph Fiennes, who happen to also be the first 4 alphabetical announcements in that category.
I know, it's crazy.
So we get down to the end, and I'm like, okay, well, Daniel Craig's not going to be in there because they would have gotten him already. So it could be Hugh Grant for Heretic, who got a Golden Globe nomination, I guess, or Sebastian Stan for one of his 2 movies. And when they start reading Sebastian Stan's name, I like pump my fist because I love A Different Man so much. And when then they said The Apprentice, I said, okay, fine. I'm so happy for Sebastian Stan. I just wish it was for a different movie.
I mean, it definitely feels sort of like a body of work nod for Sebastian this year.
I thought that would never happen. I thought he would split his own vote. Like, the fact that it happened at all is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I do think his speech for A Different Man at the Globes really helped him, because
it was fantastic.
It was a great speech. It was a great speech about A Different Man, but he also very smartly weaved The Apprentice in there and sort of the power of making challenging choices. Also, it's impossible. Both Sebastian and Jeremy Strong got in. It seems you know, I don't know. It's interesting because the Globes had very little politics to them. You know, we were on the verge of a second Trump presidency, and everyone sort of maybe save for Sebastian in a sort of a bleak way, like avoided that. But I don't know. Now that Trump has taken office, I do feel like, and the Oscars are going to have this more somber tone because of the fires, which have to do with climate change. And it definitely feels like there's a, you know, I don't think he's going to win, but I do think the fact that he is there for this movie that the current president tried to block the release of is significant, and is the Academy sort of standing up, and Jeremy too. Yeah. Jeremy felt more likely always, but...
Yeah. It's possible that the real Trump has spoken out about this in the time that we've been recording. I'm sure
I know. I haven't looked it up.
But there did seem to be this feeling, and you can tell me, like, you know, we're 4 days since inauguration, but I felt like when The Apprentice came out in September before the election, and then after, in this period between the election and inauguration, it was like, nobody wants to think about Trump. Nobody wants to talk about him. But now that he's back in office and like doing things that are making people mad all the time, I feel like The Apprentice could have more power as something being like, okay, fine, I'm so sick of this guy. Let me go like watch this movie and see
100%.
How he became what he is. And because I do think The Apprentice is interesting. I prefer A Different Man to it. But like, I don't know. Maybe there's, I agree with you. I don't think he's going to win. I'm thrilled that he got this nomination. But I do think The Apprentice might have more power now than it did before.
I think so as well. I think that was always the question with The Apprentice. Like, how are people going to react? And now people are mad again. And so that, you know, and this does feel like an FU.
Now we're mad again. Okay, you talked about supporting actors, so maybe we'll do that next. So we got Yura Borisov of Anora, Kieran Culkin of A Real Pain, Edward Norton of A Complete Unknown, Guy Pearce of The Brutalist, and then Jeremy Strong of The Apprentice.
Yeah.
I mean, supporting actor was so all over the place. It felt like a lot of things could potentially happen, but this is kind of like the most predictable version of that unpredictable lineup that we had. Clarence Macklin being the huge omission, although he did share the screenplay nomination for Sing Sing, so I was glad to see that.
Clarence Macklin still has an Oscar nomination, which is lovely. Very sad he didn't get in here, but I do think this does feel like, I wasn't completely surprised by anything here.
Yeah. I think I'm looking at my predictions that I had made. I had basically swapped him in for Jeremy Strong, and that's where he'd wind up with. And now we have the Succession reunion once again between Kieran Culkin and Jeremy Strong, and just still seems like they don't like each other very much. It might be interesting.
Yeah, and it still seems like in the final season of Succession, Kieran's probably going to take this one.
Although, don't you now have your eye on Edward Norton more? Given
Definitely.
How
I mean, and I love that performance.
He's so good.
I think he's incredible in that thing. I do think that Kieran Train is sort of pretty unstoppable at this point, and he's just so endearing every time he takes the mic, wearing like tattoos that his children like put on his arm, and like, you know, I don't think anything's stopping that, but I do think people really loved.
Yeah, I will file away that A Real Pain did miss that Best Picture nomination. So I don't know. I think I'm still with you, but just putting that thought in our brains. Okay, I'm going to save Best Actress for last because there's so much to talk about. Yeah. So let's do Supporting Actress. Once again, A Complete Unknown showing strength with Monica Barbaro. Then you've got Ariana Grande for Wicked, Felicity Jones for The Brutalist, Isabella Rossellini and her first Oscar nomination for Conclave, and then Zoe Saldana, who's going to win for Amelia Perez.
Yes, Zoe Saldana's going to win. I don't think there's any question about that.
No, not really.
At this point, I did think for a while, very early on, I was like, maybe it's going to be like a fight with Ariana and Zoe, but it's not. It's Zoe.
Yeah.
Zoe is going to win.
Yeah, I mean, Ariana, this is her first major film role. It's the Lady Gaga model, basically, where it's like, okay, we're glad to have you. Welcome to the club, but we're not going to annoy you.
You're
just
wonderful,
yet.
But we're not fully ready to be you're an actress now. Which is shitty sometimes, but I think that's true. And Zoe, I think, also has such a, her narrative is so strong. She's been toiling away in these franchise movies, being sort of a steady hand, and now she finally gets her sort of breakout. Oh, you can really do this, moment. Isabella, love this for her. She's my favorite Instagram follow of all time.
It's kind of a silly nomination because the role is so small.
It's so small. She does her little curtsy. It's a silly nomination, but
it gets a mid-movie applause break, as I wrote in my Letterboxd review when I saw Conclave at TIFF, and that leads just straight here.
And she's a delightful presence.
Yeah. I mean, the big omissions here, Ingenue Ellis Taylor for Nickel Boys. We kind of we talked about our faith in the award system in Nickel Boys. Daniel Deadwyler for The Piano Lesson, which that movie just felt like it really fell off pretty quickly. I didn't have huge high hopes for it, but it is kind of not a great track record for a great actress to keep getting ignored by the Oscars like this.
Yeah, and I do think that that is another one where we talked about Searchlight had A Real Pain and A Complete Unknown, and A Complete Unknown sort of started taking up a lot of the momentum. Here you have Netflix and the Amelia Perez horse with them just felt so strong, and it's felt I'm not sure if there's anything else they could have done for Piano Lesson, but it did feel okay, all the attention went to Amelia.
And then I had wondered if Margaret Qualley could get in, given the substance was really strong. I would bet it was pretty close. It kind of feels like she and Monica Barbaro got in a similar, you're new and exciting post, and then Monica Barbaro
and
got
I do think that I really love Monica Barbaro's performance, and I do think you have the oh shit, she sings and she sounds like Joan Baez. That's crazy, and
she's really great in that movie.
And I think that narrative really helps her. Whereas, I guess we can eventually segue this into Best Actress, which is that Demi is really the face of the substance in a weird way, even though, remember, you are one. But Margaret definitely, I think, doesn't get the oh wow, she did that of the substance as much as Demi, even though she is sort of doing equally as much.
Well, and also Margaret Qualley is so in demand and so going places. Like she, like a nomination would be great, obviously, but like I feel like for Monica Barbaro, this nomination makes such a big difference for her, like leaping up in her career. And Margaret Qualley is kind of already like in the club. I mean, Nepo Baby, maybe that's part of the power there.
Shout out to Monica Barbaro. I did one of her very early interviews when she was on the second season of the television show Unreal.
Wow. Well done.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to Best Actress. And let me tell you that when this nomination was being announced, my heart was like pounding. Like it's not healthy to act like this. And I cannot help myself.
I know. This is maybe where we both feel the most sad, obviously.
Yeah, but also delighted.
Yeah.
So we've got Cynthia Erivo for Wicked, Carla Sofia Gascon for Amelia Perez, Mikey Madison for Anora, Demi Moore for The Substance, and Fernando Torres and I'm Still Here. Hugely exciting.
Also,
we saw the movie together.
Yes. Like, I'm Still Here. You and I were very much like, let's go see this movie. You know, It wasn't getting like all the huge buzz at TIFF when we were there. It was sort of like, we hear this is good. And then you and I went to the press screening and we're both sort of like blown away. So...
Yes. And so we've got, other than Cynthia Erivo, who's nominated for Harriet, it's all first-time nominees in this category, which is, and like, you know, for having first-time nominees ranging from Demi Moore, who's been acting for so long, and then Mikey Madison, who's relatively brand new. Like, it's a good lineup. But it doesn't have Marianne Jean-Baptiste, which
devastatingly.
I was on that train. I never gave up. I wanted to believe it until the final moment.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows if she was SWAT for Fernando Torres? Who knows how the votes stacked up? But it does feel like they were kind of in the same lane, and there was only room for one in the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's upsetting and it feels like Hard Truths, which is an incredible movie with, I think, one of the best performances one of the performances that will go down in history. I think
of all time.
Of all time. Like, truly, Marianne Jean-Baptiste is like, that performance is going to go down in history. But like that movie just, you know, it's like rejected from Cannes, rejected from Venice, rejected from Telluride, finally got into TIFF. Like there's something, I don't know what it is. And I'm not like conspiracy theory, but there's something like, there is an establishment in the film industry that was never accepting of that movie. And it's very strange.
Yeah. And like Mike Leigh didn't get in for screenplay, which would have been incredibly well deserved. And he's been nominated a lot in screenplay. So like, you know, Marianne Jean-Baptiste felt like a harder lift.
She did get nominated for Secrets and Lies, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And she's won, you know, all of the critics' prizes more or less. Like, you know, she has gotten attention. She's gotten a boost from this. But I was a believer that a performance like that could not go ignored. And like they really did like pound the pavement, you know, like, around the New York Film Critics Circle dinner where she won Best Actress. Like they were on the news. They were all over the place. Yeah.
And I do wonder too if some of it has to do with like Pansy is a very hard character to sit with. She is a challenging woman. That is sort of the point of the movie. You know, if we're going to do one-on-one with the sort of like indie international, like Fernando Torres, who I also think is amazing, and I'm Still Here, is playing a heroic character. She's playing a woman that you root for, who stands up to authority. And like, Pansy is not that. Pansy is a hard woman to sit with. And, you know, I do think that might have hurt in the long run.
Yeah. Although I will say with this actress lineup in the annals of like cute, charming women winning Best Actress, like you've got the Wicked Witch of the West. You've got Amelia Perez, who makes some questionable choices. You've got Anora, who is also, she's a firecracker, but she's also kind of a hard to be around sometimes. And then Demi Moore in The Substance. Like, you know, there's some interesting anti-heroes here.
Yes, but let's not lie. Like, Elphaba is an inspiring character. Amelia Perez, even in her own way, is like, you know, and this is something that people debated about the movie, is like, she is a person who killed, but it's like she's trying to better herself in the context of this film. You know, maybe The Substance is really maybe the only one where it is truly like a complicated, you know, a woman who is not trying to stand up to some sort of authority instead of being like pressured by it, you know, society.
That is an interesting way to put it. Does any of this change our belief that Demi Moore is just going to win this Oscar?
No, Demi Moore's going to win.
That's what I thought. Okay, so we have a bunch of the other categories, of the technical categories, where I think it's interesting that Dune Part 2 only got 5 nominations. The first one won 6 Oscars, like kind of bananas.
Right.
What else stood out from you about the technical categories?
Nosferatu really, I think, maybe came in some of those like technical categories that like Dune Part 2 I mean, I'm not sure if it like really blocked out any of those, but like it's there in production design, it's there in costume design, it's there in cinematography, you know, like
and in makeup. It got 4 nominations. That's kind of great.
You know, which is pretty cool. And I think, you know, I think it was helped that was like, it was a big hit over this voting period, and like people are, you know, talking about it. So
yeah, good for Focus having that and Conclave, actually. That's a really good run for them. We talked a little bit about original song, but, you know, Diane Warren coming through. That's where she's always going to land.
She's going to...
The 2 Amelia Perez songs both got in. I would still think El Mal has the edge as the more interesting one.
Edge. It's the one I remember, the blah, you know.
Yeah, in Spanish.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that the Wild Robot song didn't get in from Maren Morris.
Yeah.
They pushed that really hard. Like they put everything behind that song.
And Wild Robot did get sound. It did get score. You know, it showed up. You know, I think it's interesting, like both Wild Robot and Flow sort of showing it. Like Flow showed up in international too. Wild Robot showed up in categories beyond just like animated film. I still think Flow is going to win animated film. It sort of like has that juice, I think. And I think the fact that it's in international too is like a big sign that people are loving that little kitty.
Yeah, international had it left out Kneecap, which I was really rooting for. I don't know, like international, it's not like the strongest year for international films. Like I think Amelia Perez is going to run away with the entire thing.
Of course,
but, shout out to Kneecap, which I really liked.
Shout out to Girl with a Needle, a very difficult movie that I think is pretty cool that it got.
And now I finally need to watch that.
Yes, it is about baby killing.
I was talking earlier about Wicked and places it didn't show up that I thought would have been interesting. I don't know that I thought it would show up in cinematography, but it did seem like if you're going to be like the runaway success, that's a place that you would be. You know, Amelia Perez is nominated there. So, you know, filing that away is somewhere where Wicked might be weaker than we thought.
Yes. I don't know. Looking at here, I'm sort of like, Amelia Perez, maybe it's going to win.
13 nominations.
Crazy.
Like, that's not the record, but it's very
close.
Netflix
has never won a Best Picture, even when this has happened before.
But like, you know, in the era of like the executive orders focused on trans people, like it's going to be an interesting time for Amelia Perez specifically, as like odd as that movie is. Were you among us predicting Maria in cinematography, despite all sense that movie had fallen apart because Ed Lachman just gets nominations?
I mean, if I'm being honest, I wasn't even thinking about it. But like then when I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, Ed Lachman, like shout out, like love him. Incredible work in that movie. Like,
it's beautifully filmed.
Incredible work in that movie. It is so interesting. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting looking at the Netflix titles too. You know, it felt like heading into the season, like, okay, they're going to have like a sure thing with Angelina getting in. They're going to, you know, Danielle is going to be very strong in Piano Lesson, and really sort of like everything except Amelia truly fell away from them outside of like, you know, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul.
Which, shout out, that's a great movie. No, I was realizing that Daughters, which Netflix, the documentary, it's wonderful. It's like so incredibly moving. Didn't make it in. There are no Netflix documentaries nominated. And they're usually, actually, I didn't check on the shorts, but they're usually, they have one short, The Only Girl in the Orchestra, nominated in Best Act Short. But yeah, they're usually really strong there.
Yeah. You know, I guess we can talk a little bit about documentary No Other Land, the doc about Israeli settlements and the Israeli-Palestinian production, which has not been technically distributed in the U.S. yet. It doesn't have a distributor. It has played in a number of theaters in New York. I'm not sure if it's around L.A., but that got in there, which feels very big for that movie.
I mean, I think it's just going to win.
I think it's going to win, too. I also, I really love Sugar Cane. I think that's a great movie.
I love Sugar Cane also. I think that's Nat Geo, so it's probably on Disney Plus at this point. I don't
think it's been released yet, but it probably will eventually be on Disney Plus.
It's out there somewhere.
Yeah.
I look forward to watching all the shorts. One of them is called Yuck, which is great.
And also honestly, I have to shout out Bowen and Rachel Sennett, who did like
such a great
job. First of all, they really did practice their pronunciation. They got everything right.
Yeah.
They also, I think when they said yuck, Rachel quipped by Charlie XCX, which really funny. When Bowen said, when Beautiful Men was announced, Bowen said, "Where?" They were very charming, very funny. They made a joke that no one got about the meme Fatima. I'm sure the random people watching this that don't know about the internet memes were like, what? But
no, they did a great job. I hope they bring them back during the
they
show
did
themselves.
They did a fabulous job.
Yeah. I wonder, I don't know who those people in the room were. Like, I thought the whole idea was that they were going to make it like a closed press conference. And then suddenly there was a room full of people who were like laughing at their jokes. So it was good to have them there. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing, it's just like, Rachel has her hair blown out at 5:30 in the morning LA time. Like, it's all very weird.
And her waist incredibly cinched.
She looks fantastic. Okay, I feel like we're getting close to wrapping it up. I mean, shout out to all the apes in visual effects, as Bowen himself noticed.
All the monkeys.
Better Man, Planet of the Apes, and Wicked, all strong ape content.
Yes, all strong monkey content.
But yeah, good, like, for all the like anxiety and stress and all this sense that it's a wide open race. I still do think it's a wide open race for Best Picture. And
I do.
I don't know who's going to win Picture or Director really at all.
No.
We'll see how that changes over the next little while. But I think for what we had and like, the expected places where they wouldn't step up to the challenge, I think the nominations did a pretty good job.
Yeah, and I do think that campaigning is going to be an interesting thing this year. People are going to be treading very delicately because of the wildfires. But also, we're not going to have the luncheon where people, where there usually is this sort of like, people making their, that said, I do think people are going to do things.
Oh, yeah. There will be plenty of events in that weekend where the luncheon would have been.
Yeah. But, it'll be interesting to see how people sort of navigate this campaign.
Yeah. We have an interesting couple of months ahead. I do think that, like, the political aspect, you're totally right. I hadn't thought about it till this morning. I do think that, like, we now are in the second Trump era award season, and it's going to feel that way, even though it didn't seem like it would be for a while. We'll have a lot to talk about. And I'm excited to see some of these people win Oscars.
Me too.
Whoever comes out of these. So thank you for waking up early. And not that you would have slept through this. Like, the people who say they sleep through the nominations, like,
I couldn't sleep last night, as I said.
Yes, we'll talk again soon. And everybody hang on for a moment and you'll hear my Substack Live with Richard Rushfield in one moment.
Okay. Thanks, Katie.
So now we're going to share some of the highlights from the Substack Live I did on Thursday afternoon with Richard Rushfield, who, as you'll probably hear, is at Sundance. He's preparing for next year's batch of Oscar hopefuls. And we just went over your burning questions about how these nominations shook out. As you will probably be able to tell, Richard has a little bit of a different perspective on award season and the Oscars and the future of them than Esther and I do. So it should be an interesting contrast to what you just heard me and Esther talk about. So we'll share some of the highlights. If you would like to listen in on future Substack Lives with me and my colleagues, become a paid subscriber to The Ankler. Go to theankler.com and find out all about it. I would love to see you there next time.
This in the podcast form. You've just heard me and Esther Zuckerman talk about it. We did a podcast on it kind of right after the nominations this morning. But what are your thoughts? How did we do on our Oscar nominations this year?
Well, my biggest thought was that I got 9 out of 10 right.
I know. Your first thought was, how well did I do? Which is not something I thought about.
I'm Still Here is the one that looks like every pundit in the world missed.
Yeah, I do think there was this sense that it would have momentum. It's a Sony Pictures Classics release, and I think you and I both know that Sony Classics, they're really good at those small films that they put out there in January and just seize momentum at the right time. Anthony Hopkins wins for The Father in the same way. But I'm not sure. I thought maybe Walter Salles would sneak in as Best Director because he's so acclaimed. I really did not see Best Picture coming. That was so exciting. You're going to hear a lot about Emilia Perez in the coming weeks. I think that's the one that people are going to be hyperbolic and say is like, an affront to all things the Oscars stand for. I like the movie better than that. I don't know if I would put it over some of the ones that it may beat for Best Picture. But no, I generally agree with you that it's a strong lineup.
I have things I would vote for above the others, but these are all really good movies. I think the big message coming out of this is about me, of course. Once again, coming out of Toronto, I came out and was telling everybody The Substance is the best movie of the year. and watched The Substance, and I was sneered at and poo-pooed and got a lot of eye rolls, and here we are,
Yep.
Oscar nominee, including Best Director.
I always stuck with Corley Farja as Best Director nominee. I felt like she really fit the model of what we had in the last couple of years of, international auteurs like Ruben Östlund or Jonathan Glazer making it in Best Director. But I Best Picture always felt on the bubble. I thought Margaret Qualley might get in for a moment there. But yeah, really congratulations to you as a Substance true believer. You saw the light.
Overall, this is a big day for me. So I'd like to thank the Academy. And,
I think the one I was celebrating most was Nickel Boys, which I really did not know if it was going to make it in for Best Picture. I realized at some point this afternoon, so it's an MGM Amazon release, and it got the exact same 2 nominations, Best Picture and Best Adapted Screenplay, as Women Talking, which was another MGM strong Oscar hopeful from years past that felt like it might go places and then kind of fell off a little bit and landed in that spot. So, not a bad place to be. But here's the bigger picture question I wanted to ask you that, we got some good listener questions about I'm Still Here, which I do want to talk about. But I think something that you talked about in your kind of How to Save the Oscar series from a few weeks ago is that you kind of have to make it so that it's movies that people care about, get people to participate, get the town to be invested in it. In this Best Picture lineup, we've got 2 movies made by a major studio, Wicked and Dune Part 2, which performed way lower than the nomination haul for Dune Part 1, which is very strange. I mean, as much as we like The Substance and Nickel Boys, do you feel like this Best Picture lineup is healthy for getting at what you're talking about?
I mean, it's getting there. It's ideally you would see a few, there's no Oppenheimer. There's no.
Sure.
No
there was
this
film. Year doesn't have one in general.
Yeah. And you'd love to see a few of those every year, big studio crowd pleasers. And, Wicked, I think is very much that, but it's not quite a juggernaut yet. I don't think anybody thinks it's a contender to win the prize here.
No. I mean, here's the crazy number. You want to hear it? It's that Dune Part 1 won 6 Oscars. Dune Part 2 was only nominated for 5 Oscars.
Interesting.
Including, it got left out in places like costumes, that it won for Part 1 and was, still uniformly excellent. It's really strange. It's interesting, release date, or it just got it's thunderstolen by Wicked.
I know people in the Oscar field who really don't take well to this splitting it in 2 parts thing, and don't take well.
Wicked's about to do the same thing, so
we'll see. Well, I think if Wicked were just one movie, I think Wicked would be the huge favorite right now to win.
I think that's a good point.
I think the fact that it's 2 parts means it is a mere contender.
Well, I mean, what do you make of the fact that John Chu didn't get nominated for Best Director, which I don't think a lot of people were predicting, and it didn't get nominated for Screenplay? And Winnie Holzman, you talked to her not so long ago. Do you think that's a sign that it doesn't have quite the same level of enthusiasm that the Academy does for Emilia Perez?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look like that groundswell is happening there. And you're going to have the awards. It's probably not going to sweep those the Guild Awards and everything.
It's hard to think. Although the SAG Ensemble Award, those will be at the end of February. That'll be a really interesting way to figure out maybe what's got some heat from this group.
Yeah, but if you are the big studio juggernaut contender, you've got to win a lot of things.
Yeah.
You're not going to just squeak into first place.
Yeah, you can't win 4 Oscars. You got to win 8.
You're going to come in either as a prohibitive favorite or you're not going to win.
Yeah, well, and then the prohibitive favorite position belongs to Emilia Perez this year. I mean, here's another big existential question for you. Can Netflix win Best Picture? Can this be the year, finally?
Well, with the ranked choice voting, I think Emilia Perez is the most sort of controversial, divisive film in the lineup there. So I think that I like it quite a bit. I'm no problem with it here, but I think that is the problem for Emilia, that it's just you're going to have a lot of people giving it last place votes.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think that's true. And then, I mean, the Netflix question, I think in general, they've come so close to winning Best Picture so many times. Yeah. And I think a lot of us had kind of thought they have disrupted the industry too much. They're never going to be able to win Best Picture. I mean, you wrote about Netflix's kind of astonishing earnings report from this week and how they're succeeding in any ways. I don't know that helps them anymore with a case for winning Best Picture, though.
Hollywood doesn't love a juggernaut and wants to come out against them. But I I think the film really will. I think it's a film that people have a lot of feelings about, and
Mhm.
the results of this really will be about the film, not about the company,
Yeah.
for better or worse. So it's
Yeah. Although you would
uh,
think that would be the same for like Roma or, Power of the Dog was kind of more of the intellectual one. It was more of the
Roma.
brutalist of its year.
Roma, it was still a point where can you believe that Netflix is getting nominated and what are they doing here? They're not a film company. Is it a real release? It was still a lot of that conversation around
Yeah.
Roma, and I think we're past that now with Netflix.
Yeah, that's probably true. But are we any more past the resentment of Netflix? Like it seems like that a train has continued
I
onward.
I don't know. I think if people love Amelia Perez, I don't think they're going to vote against it because to punish Netflix. But I
Yeah,
think
that's true.
Amelia Perez has its own issues there.
Yeah, it can divide people on its own without Netflix having to be a factor in there.
And then there's Nora, which
Mhm.
I think has a lot of people that love it. Have a lot of I think a lot of the older Academy members will say this isn't the best picture.
Yeah, it's hard. It only got 6 nominations compared to,
Yeah.
Wicked and the Brutalist got 10, Conclave and A Complete Unknown got 8. So it's kind of a smaller total, but, it makes sense that Honora's not going to compete in the same way in like costumes or production design,
No.
right? Like it's a scrappier movie. And it made me think of something like Coda, which wins Best Picture without having that big a nomination total. But by having kind of this heart to it, which I think Honora has kind of in spades, Wicked does as well, maybe less so Conclave and the Brutalist. So I don't know. Like it's like the Nora train cooled so much over the course of the season. But can they come back at this point? Can they really, stage their phase 2 campaign in a way that has a powerful narrative? I think that's very much on the table.
And so the question is the Brutalist surging beyond a small group? It has a group of fans that are sort of the hardcore film people. It also is not a film that I hear people that don't like it as much. I have that's the one I have another one I haven't seen, but it's a very long movie.
It's really good. I promise it's worth it.
The votes for it have come from very small groups. The Golden Globes is a very small group.
Sure.
We don't know where it fell in the nominations, so there could have been 300 votes that got at the nomination for all we know.
Although you would say the same thing of like Fernanda Torres winning the Golden Globe for I'm Still Here, but obviously I think her speech and winning that Golden Globe is exactly the push that it took to get her the Best Actress nomination. So as much as the Globes are your sworn enemy, I do think they have a power in this example.
It's a platform. It's a platform that people can use, and it's one of them. But but it's not. I don't think it's predictive in itself.
Yeah, no, I think that's true.
Which for me brings it down to 2 movies.
Okay.
Between Conclave and Complete Unknown.
Yep. Okay. In terms of like the consensus movies that everyone can agree on.
Yes. And I feel like if you eliminate everything else for various reasons, those are the ones that get the broadest support there.
Yeah, for Conclave, I would have looked for an Edward Berger nomination in Best Director, which he didn't get. And I think if you look at The Complete Unknown, it didn't only get James Mangold in for Best Director, as he was also nominated for DGA, but Monica Barbaro in Best Supporting Actress. Like A Complete Unknown is showing real strength and kind of at exactly the right moment. It's in the box, it's out in theaters now. It's doing well at the box office. So I feel like momentum is on its side for sure, but it's still 6 more weeks until the Oscars themselves. So what will momentum mean by then?
Our David Lidsky points out Conclave is the subject of a right-wing backlash, which I hadn't actually caught. The question is, of the 10,000 voters, how many of them classify themselves as right-wing?
Well, I don't know.
40?
Are they all trying to suck up to Melania and make documentaries about her?
Not in their private ballots.
I read a fascinating Ankler piece about the state of documentaries in Hollywood and MAGA. So I wrote about this in my newsletter and we talked about this, Esther. But those 2 nominations for The Apprentice, Carla Sofia Gascon making history as the first openly trans actress ever nominated for an Oscar. The Oscars are kind of waltzing into politics when we thought that they were going to avoid it all season, and it does feel like the vibe has shifted a little bit since inauguration. That there is kind of a sense of if you're not Jeff Bezos going to inauguration, that maybe you do want to vote your protest in some way. So I'm really interested to see how that pans out.
There's a story of a complete unknown, which, as David Litsky pointed out correctly, that has been my prediction to win for many months now. But the story of this kind of difficult genius, this difficult man of genius who is not so good to the people around you, that is that story going to feel like maybe that's not the story we want to latch on to at this moment?
No, you want the story of the 2 women in Oz going up against a dictator, right? Like that's the big emotional catharsis.
Wicked would be the most, like if you said I'm an Oscar voter and I want to vote to stand up to Trump. Wicked would be the purest vote for that right now.
Yeah, I think so. But it's just, how many people are willing to do that? Although I will also say, it's another thing Esther and I talked about, like, I'm still here surging in this moment of kind of political uncertainty. I know you haven't seen it yet, but it does feel like it speaks to the moment in a really specific way. And 2 of the listener questions I did get on Blue Sky ahead of time were both about whether Fernando Torres is now Demi Moore's biggest competition for Best Actress win because of the power of that movie. And I think the momentum behind her. I don't know if you have an opinion on that, having not seen it. Love Fernando Torres. I think she's wonderful in the movie. I still kind of think Demi Moore has this in a lock. But once you see that movie, I think you'll really see why it feels resonant right now.
Yeah, I have to see that. But I wonder, so you have 2 Best Picture winners that are also in the Best International category too.
Yeah. Yep. I'm still here at Amelia Perez.
Traditionally allows them to give somebody the international so they don't have to give them the Best Picture.
It would be very interesting if on Oscar night, international is announced way earlier than Best Picture. If I'm Still Here wins Best International, you can think, oh, does that mean Amelia Perez is winning Best Picture? It's a decent assumption. Can
we just single out also the Doc Branch once again screws up as they live to do. The one snub that I'm mad about here is
Will and Harper.
Will and Harper not getting a Doc nomination.
Yeah,
or
song. It has a great song that also didn't get nominated.
The Doc Branch lives to punish anyone who dares have any public following.
Well, the Doc Branch is interesting too, because a lot of times Netflix films will make it into documentary, and Will and Harper missed, as did Daughters, another Netflix film that's really wonderful. Like, it's not the fun light one; it's just really well made. So even though Netflix had all this success with Amelia Perez, The Piano Lesson got blanked. Danielle Deadwyler didn't get in supporting actress. His 3 Daughters, for that matter, like that campaign didn't go far enough. Maria got nominated for cinematography for Ed Lachman. It's beautifully shot. It deserved it, but didn't go any further than that. So it's a mixed bag for them, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing having a film with the most nominations is a good day for them. But
that's true.
They want to get that big trophy some year. They've collected a lot of the other trophies, and they've come this close so many times.
Yeah. Another listener question I wanted to answer from Blue Sky was, what do you make of the Luca Guadagnino shutout? I definitely expected at least a Daniel Craig nomination. So that's that both challengers and queer. Luca Guadagnino had 2 films out this year. They came in with 0 nominations between the 2 of them. Even the challenger score, which I felt like pretty hopeful about getting in, got blanked. What do you think?
I think both Challenger and Dune 2 both suffered from being early in the year. And that's really hard to do if you're not a runaway favorite. I think if Challenger had come out in November, I think it very well might have.
Well, it was supposed to have come out last fall, which it really would have been a different story if it had been part of the 2023 Oscar race.
Yeah.
But one more thing to blame the strikes for.
And people weren't looking at it through that, except for some foolish stories that said it was going to run away and win Best Picture and all that. But
I wish I lived in that world.
I think if it had come out in November, people would have thought of it that way. It would have kind of been looked at more closely.
Yeah. I mean, we've had, last couple of years, like Oppenheimer came out in the summer, Coda came out in the summer, Everything Everywhere All at Once came out in the spring. The calendar's been shifting a little bit, but it does feel like we're now kind of back to a fall movies or serious movies logic, which is flawed.
Yeah.
When you think about it.
Yeah, it is. And I think Challengers you can point to as a film that lost out there. And the other one, Queer, I mean, I don't think that made, for whatever reason, that did not enter into the conversation. I haven't seen it.
Yeah,
but
it's a challenging one. I was rooting for Daniel Craig to get his first Oscar nomination. I think a lot of people were, but I also can see now Sebastian Stan has his first Oscar nomination, and he was wonderful in 2 movies. So I'm really happy to see it.
Yeah.
I think we're getting close to time to wrap up, partly because our colleagues on the Inkler podcast are waiting for me. So I wanted to shift looking toward the ceremony itself. We've gotten a little bit of news in the last couple of days, but what they'll do, they're talking about taking time to honor the people who fought the Los Angeles wildfires and celebrate LA's community. They're not going to do original song performances. They're going to do tributes to the songwriters. And Conan O'Brien is hosting. And so now that, award season is a little bit back to business as usual after the last couple of weeks, how are you feeling about how all this song and dance is going to continue?
Yeah, I mean, I would have liked them to see them do a little bit more for the fire.
It's still like they haven't done the show yet, right? They can still do more.
Yeah, if they were going to do more, they'd be telling us how they're going to do more. Instead,
they made a big financial contribution.
Great. They could make a much bigger one by devoting time on the show. They say a lot of, and we're going to mention the fire. Fire will be there too. So I expect a segment, which is nice, but I'm kind of all through the pandemic, I kept saying, why are you doing this goddamn show? There weren't any movies anyway. Turn the whole thing into a telethon. This is Hollywood's chance to show that you have some feeling for people who are suffering in the world. And I think in the second pandemic show, they didn't even mention the pandemic. Wasn't even like a tip of the hat. Oh yeah, pandemic, you're out there.
That's the one with the slap. So things really went awry in many, many ways.
Yeah, that was so having ignored that and millions of people dead, I feel a little funny about but now people in our town are hurt. So now we've got to, but yet half of our good swath of our town was burned down. And we have a lot of people here suffering, and I'd rather Oscar. Anything to shake it up is my feeling.
Yeah, well, I mean, I remain optimistic eternally about what they can manage to do with this. So we'll have to check in after the Oscars themselves and see how it all worked out. And Richard, hopefully, we'll get together and talk Sundance pretty soon, because by the next time we speak, you'll have seen a lot of great movies that may get Oscar nominations next year.
It was within a couple hours. I will have seen a movie, so
all right,
I'll have an opinion on it.
Thanks for doing this with me. Yeah, and thanks to everyone who listened. Hopefully we'll keep doing more of these. So please join us and tell your friends to subscribe to The Inkler so they can join us next time.
That does it for today's episode. This podcast is produced by Brett Fuchs and me. Our theme music is by Dave Gonzalez. Thanks again to my guests, Esther Zuckerman and Richard Rushfield. Subscribe to the Prestige Junkie newsletter at theinkler.com and subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back next week and with many more bonus episodes between now and the Oscars. We'll see you then.